So, what is H-1B classification? So, H-1B classification is generally for professional workers with a bachelor's degree or higher who can work for up to 6 years in what's called a specialty occupation. So, that's a weird word. What's a specialty occupation? So, when we think about a specialty occupation, we have to keep in mind that it's one that requires at least a bachelor's degree or higher in a specific field. And there's two really critical components in order to get H-1B classification. So the first is that there has to be a very tight correlation between your degree and the position that you seek to fill. So, like, if you're someone who has a degree in fashion and you're seeking a position as a mathematician, that doesn't work for EB-5, or excuse me, for H-1B purposes. It's more if you have a mechanical engineering degree and you're seeking a job as a mechanical engineer, that's a good fit for H-1B classification. The other thing that's really critical to the category is that the employer has to pay you a required wage. And that wage is the higher of the prevailing wage or the actual wage for your specific position in your specific area. So, what are the advantages of H-1B classification? So, there are quite a few. Ultimately, you can get up to 6 years of H-1B classification and additional H-1B extensions beyond the sixth year in one of two ways. One is if you start your EB-5, if you start your green card process before the end of your fifth year in H-1B status, or you have an approved I-140 or an approved I-526 petition before the end of your sixth year in H-1B status. Contrary to what I think is popular belief, there's not actually an advertising or test of the labor market that's associated with H-1B classification. And there's little to no delay when you actually have to change employers. So a thing called porting enables you to commence employment with a new employer as long as that employer has filed an H-1B petition on your behalf. It does not necessarily have to be approved. Another benefit, but also something that I'll mention in the context of disadvantages, is there is spousal work authorization for H-4 holders, but it is very, very limited. So, what are the disadvantages of H-1B classification? So, H-1B filings are always employer, occupation, worksite, and wage specific. That means that every new employer that you have has to file an H-1B petition on your behalf. It also means that any changes to your job, to your worksite, to your wage always have to be analyzed to determine if an amended H-1B petition is required. This year, potential disadvantages for H-1B holders include, of course, the H-1B proclamation that came out. I want to say it was September 21st of last year. So what that instituted was a $100,000 fee applicable to petitions filed on behalf of beneficiaries outside of the United States. A second new introduction that complicates H-1Bs is the weighted selection rule that's applicable to the lottery. So what that effectively means is that positions that have higher wages have a greater chance of selection in the lottery now. So if you are at what's called their level 4 wage, which is the highest wage level you can be at, you effectively get 4 shots at the lottery versus if you're in an entry level position and you have a level 1 wage, you only get 1 selection. So your odds of getting selected in the H-1B lottery are now much reduced in comparison to past administrations. Again, I mentioned this as a benefit, but it can also be sort of a downside, which is the limited work authorization for spouses. So H-4 spouses are only eligible to apply for work authorization when the H-1B holder has an approved I-140 petition only. And the I-140 is the penultimate step in the green card process or the normal employer-based green card process. And it takes about 2 years minimum to reach that step. So that would be, that would be well down the road for individuals who are in H-4 status. They would be here without work authorization for quite a long period of time, potentially. And that also assumes that at the end of the day, your employer even agrees to sponsor you. So it's not a given. They have to decide when and who they'll sponsor for permanent residence. So you don't necessarily even have that opportunity, depending on the facts of your situation. And probably the biggest downside, of course, to the H-1B category is that there's a finite number of H-1Bs available each year to individuals in the private sector. So that means that even if you get an employer to sponsor you, you may not get a number in the lottery and thus work authorization. And you have to keep in mind that the lottery occurs only once a year. Again, the chances of selection are potentially much reduced this year, depending on where you fall in the wage spectrum. So, just to give you sort of an idea of what the odds are, keep in mind that there are 65,000 H-1B numbers available to those with bachelor's degrees and higher. And then there's an additional 20,000 available for those who have U.S. master's degrees or higher. And in 2025, for all of those 85,000 slots, there were over 470,000 registrations, 470,000 for 85,000 total slots. So that gives you an idea of what your chances are in any given year. In 2026, just this past year, they were slightly lower, but it was still around 350,000. So you are up against sort of great odds if you are going into a private sector job and you are vying for one of these H-1B numbers.